Hey everyone, welcome back to another video here on DarkSec. I am Dark, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Intro to ISAC room on TryHackMe. Learn how to utilize information sharing and analysis centers to gather threat intelligence and collect IOCs. Let's go ahead and dive into Task 1, Introduction. Information sharing and analysis centers, ISACs, are used to share and exchange various indicators of compromise, IOCs, to obtain threat intelligence. IOCs can include MD5 hashes, IPs, Yara rules, and more. There are many ISACs that can be used to gather threat intelligence, including AlienVault OTX, that's the one that I have a lot of experience with, Threat Connect, and MISP. This is one that I actually mentioned that if you check out my video on Introduction to SIMs, I talk a little bit about OTX and its role within the SIM environment. I definitely recommend checking that out. I will have a link to that in the video description as well. Let's see. Malware and IOCs used in this room have been sourced from the Zoo Malware repository. This is a really cool GitHub repository, and I definitely recommend checking that out. You can download a bunch of what is essentially defanged malware that you can go through and play with. It still has its signatures, but it doesn't do anything malicious. Very, very cool repository, and it's great if you're learning blue teaming. All credit goes to respective owners. Warning: the room uses neutered malware in a virtual environment. Exercise caution when interacting with samples. For future updates in room, follow Krillic on Twitter. Krillic did make this room. He's been doing a lot of the blue team rooms along with Sam, and they've done a great job. Read the above and move on to what are ISACs. We'll go ahead and mark that as complete and move into Task 2, Basic Terminology. Before diving in, let's briefly discuss a few terms that you will often hear when dealing with the framework, threat intelligence, etc. APT is an acronym for Advanced Persistent Threat. This can be considered a team or group, a threat group, or even a country, so a nation-state group, that engages in long-term attacks against organizations and or countries. So the NSA would be considered an APT in this specific instance. Or the NSA's, I think it's the algorithm group. I probably just butchered their name, but definitely recommend taking a look into that. APTs are a very interesting topic, and I'd even love to see a room just over APTs on TryHackMe. The term advanced can be misleading, as it will tend to cause us to believe that each APT group all have some super weapon. So, for example, a zero-day exploit that they use. That's not always the case. As we will see a bit later, the techniques these APT groups use are quite common and can be detected with the right implementations in place. You can view FireEye's current list of APT groups here. Definitely recommend checking that out. It's a very cool resource. One note on this, so APTs, I think we're going to talk about it in a little bit later. Some of them can be very, very naive, what would be referred to as script kiddie level, where they don't really use advanced tactics at all. They're just persistent, and they're a group that's classified as such. A lot of times these are the groups that are responsible for your big wormable malware. What do I mean by that? Things like Emotet, TrickBot, other things like that are created by these APT groups. Marcus, malware, I can't remember his full Twitter handle. He worked, I think, on one of the original banking Trojans. That would be considered potentially linked to APT groups. Generally speaking, these are going to mostly refer to nation-state groups such as North Korea, the Russians. The Russians have a couple APT groups, as I mentioned, the NSA, and so on and so forth. So definitely recommend taking a look into this. Darknet Diaries has a number of episodes on APT groups as well. The series on the North Korean group is really, really interesting, and same with Unit. I can't remember. Israel has a really advanced hacking group, which is really interesting to learn about, just because of everything that they do. Very unique culture with their InfoSec team. TTP, moving on, is an acronym for Tactics, Techniques, and Procedures. But what does each of these terms mean? So the tactic is the adversary's goal or objective, so what they're actually going out, what they're trying to do. The technique is how the adversary achieves the goal or objective, and then the procedure is how the technique is executed. TI is an acronym for Threat Intelligence. Threat Intelligence is an overarching term for all collected information on adversaries and TTPs. So threat intelligence includes both of these. Each APT has TTPs, and then threat intelligence is that collection. So those like little folders that you create. You also commonly hear CTI or cyber threat intelligence, which is just another way of saying threat intelligence. So same term, slightly different. IOCs is an acronym for indicators of compromise. That is a very, very common acronym. That is something that if you've done any of the malware rooms on TryHackMe or any of the forensics rooms rather, you will hear IOCs come up a lot. TTPs and IOCs are very common industry terms in that case. These are the indicators for malware and adversary groups. So for example, a different file hash that they use, like a known rat reverse, so a Trojan that they use, an executable that they use commonly, that would be an IOC. Indicators can include file hashes, IPs, names, etc., domains. You can find a bunch of these, and this is actually something that I recommend taking a look at on AlienVault OTX, just because you can take a look at some of the what they're called pulses, which are those threat intelligence bundles that we had talked about, and they will show you different things that you can collect on it. And it's with information security being such an exposure-based field, looking through those can give you a good idea of what you should look out for, especially in a defensive position. This is also good to know as an offensive operator, though, because you need to know what can give you away. Read the above and familiarize yourself with the various terminology. I think we might talk about this. There's a related term to all this that I wanted to mention as well. When we're talking about what we're detecting, one specific model that I want to bring up is the Pyramid of Pain. If you have not heard of it, I definitely recommend taking a look into that. I'm not going to go too far into it, but it's essentially different levels of defensive operations that we can have that make life as a red team or life within an APT a lot more painful, hence why it's called the Pyramid of Pain. As you go up, things are harder to do in the pyramid. Like it's harder to do specific, like the top level is very hard to do. But if you can get that, it makes life really, really hard. So just something to be aware of. I definitely recommend taking a look into that. Google it, pause the video right here, go and take a look into that. It's a really interesting topic, and it will set a lot of this up for how it actually fits in the field. That being said, let's move into task 3. What is threat intelligence? Threat intelligence, also known as TI, and cyber threat intelligence, also known as CTI, is used to provide information about the threat landscape, specifically adversaries and their TTPs. Typically, CTI revolves around APT groups and or other threats, and these can be well-known groups or up and coming new threats. So whenever there's a new threat that's evolving in the cybersecurity world, typically they will be either assigned an APT group or an APT number, or both. Sometimes they just get a name. Usually they have a number, though, that's associated with them. If they only have a name, that's usually a little bit more of a slang thing, but they will be assigned that group number. Groups like FireEye will look into this, and they will categorize it so that they can get that data out to their customers that they protect. Data must be analyzed to be considered threat intelligence. Once analyzed and actionable, then it becomes threat intelligence. The data needs context around it to become intel. So we actually need to know, where was this found? Who are they targeting? Are they targeting banks? Are they targeting other financial institutions or educational institutions? There are groups that just go after schools. It happens. Some groups just do that. CTI is a precautionary measure that companies use or contribute to so that other companies do not get hit with the same attacks. Of course, adversaries change their TTPs all the time, so the threat intelligence is constantly changing. I had one of my former bosses that I worked under, I like to say it this way: when you are signing up for a program like this, you are essentially buying someone else's burning wreckage, because the first time that this happens, it can be really hard to stop these. But when you are signing up for a program that you are grouped together with other companies in that you're all getting threat intelligence, you are getting that burning wreckage, you're getting the aftermath so that you can prevent it. It's a really nice way to think about this. Vendors and corporations will sometimes share their collected CTI in what are called ISACs, or Information Sharing and Analysis Centers. ISACs collect various indicators of an adversary that other corporations can use as a precaution against these adversaries. If you are not familiar with adversaries and their TTPs, I would suggest checking out the following resources. So there is the MITRE Room, which is really cool. I will have a video up for that probably by the time that this is released on the site as a subscriber-only video. Definitely recommend checking that out. It's a really cool room that talks about various different tactics and how we can break those down and number them. Again, Darknet Diaries episodes about this too. Definitely recommend checking them out. They're very cool. Threat intelligence is also broken up into 3 different types. Strategic, so this is going to be the assist senior management to make informed decisions specifically about the security budget and strategies. So it's going to be your more high-level information. There's tactical, which is what interacts with the TTPs and attack models to identify adversary attack patterns. I think this is the type that's actually more directly actionable to us, generally within the field. Think if you are actually working at a SOC and you are writing detection alerts for things like this, tactical is really interesting. And then operational, again, this is a little bit more of what you would be using as a SOC operator. Interact with IOCs and how the adversaries operationalize. So think what's actually going on. These are a little bit confusing between the two of them. I haven't really seen these called that in the field as much. It's more of a you will get threat intelligence, or you'll see what's going on in the news, and you can do research accordingly and write alerts based on that. However, this is a nice way of breaking those down. In this room, we will mainly be focusing on operational CTI, but all forms of threat intelligence have their place, and I encourage you to research each thoroughly. Read the above and move on to what are ISACs. Mark that as complete and move to task 4. What are ISACs? According to the National Council of ISACs, Information Sharing and Analysis Centers, ISACs are member-driven organizations delivering all hazards, threat, and mitigation information to asset owners and operators. ISACs can be community-centered or vendor-specific. ISACs include CTI from threat actors, as well as mitigation information in the form of IOCs, YORA rules, etc. IOCs maintain situational awareness by sharing and collaborating to maintain CTI through the National Council of ISACs. All you need to know from that is they share information, they share what you can use to detect threat actors and APTs, things like that, and this is just a big group of them. You can view a list of member ISACs here. We will be focusing on ISACs as they pertain to cybersecurity and cyber threat intelligence. However, ISACs can be utilized for more than just cybersecurity. Below is a list of ISACs that can help a blue team. However, we will only be showcasing a few in this room. And again, this is just a couple that we have mentioned before. This room will specifically focus on AlienVault OTX and Threat Connect. However, there are many more ISACs that can be used to gather threat intelligence. I encourage you to go out and research others on your own to get a good feeling for what you like and what various ISACs can offer. If this comes up in a little bit, I will mention it again. However, this is something that, especially even AlienVault OTX, in my talk that I did over this, an intro to SIMs, you can spin up an open source version of this at home. There's OSIM, which is the open source version of, I think it's OSM, is their paid model. Now, you can connect that with AlienVault OTX and do your own threat research with who's attacking your home network and who's attacking like your website and things like that. And you can actually contribute to these. And that's a really good way that if you're looking to do some cool research at home with your home lab, that's actually a really good way to get involved and start directly contributing to the community by creating those pulses, which is that threat intelligence. Otherwise, definitely recommend taking a look into that. Let's go ahead and move on to task 5. Using Threat Connect to create a threat intel dashboard. Threat Connect overview. Threat Connect focuses more on the information and new developments within cybersecurity and the threat landscape and connecting the landscape with indicators. This intelligence can help your team make better informed decisions on what to prioritize. Threat Connect would fall under the tactical type of threat intelligence. There is a free and open source version of Threat Connect available, but if you are we're actually using this on a security team, you won't want to pay for access to the full platform. This is traditionally done just because you get better intel and you get it faster, and you get a nicer interface that's more advanced and gives you API access and other things like that. Threat Connect is a very large platform with many capabilities, but we will only be using it to create our threat intel dashboard and gather indicators from other ISACs like AlienVault OTX. It is important to have multiple sources for the information or intelligence you collect. Sign up for a Threat Connect account here. I'm going to go and pause the video. I will do that here in just a moment, and we'll be right back. All right. Never mind, the sign-up system is not working. However, we have a bunch of screenshots here, so I'll actually talk about what we're going to be doing. If you don't want to sign up for this, you can just follow along with what I'm going to be doing as well, as we'll just talk about the threat dashboard. So creating a threat intel dashboard. Straight out of the box, Threat Connect comes with a pre-configured dashboard you can use, as well as four other more specific dashboards. The operations dashboard, source analysis, OSINT overview, and COVID-19 related activity. I believe there are a number of videos on how to actually make dashboards like this. It's really interesting. That being said, let's go and move on. We will only be covering the default dashboard in depth, but feel free to play with other dashboards as much as you want to get familiar with them as the other features Threat Connect has. So here you can see the example dashboard that they give you. You can see the top sources that are actually coming in, by observations, by false positives, the actual tags that these sources have, and then latest intelligence that's actually been submitted. Breaking down that dashboard, let's dive into those sources. We can break up the various sections of the dashboard to make it more digestible and see what each section has to offer. Top sources by observations, so that top left up here. This section sorts observations or indicators by the owner or source of the observation. This is helpful to find reliable sources for intelligence, as the majority of threat intelligence is community driven. You can see who's submitting things, which is really cool. Very, very cool to see who's submitting these observations. This can be really useful if you want to find a group that you want to follow for your organization. Think of it this way: if you find a group that is submitting really good intel, you want to subscribe to their updates. You can do this on AlienVault OTX and other things like that. I'm not sure how it works on Threat Connect, but I'm sure that they have something like that, where you can get these intelligence updates that will automatically go into your SIM, and it will start flagging traffic for you. So you can have that start actively incorporated, or be automatically incorporated into your network in that way. So latest intelligence, that top right section. This gives the latest intelligence that has been reported to the platform. This can be helpful if you want to stay on top of the newest rising threats. And again, just see what has been submitted. Useful if you see something that is just brand new and it's causing a massive amount of problems. A lot of times this will be similar to what is on InfoSec Twitter. If there's a big bout of malware, a lot of people will usually be tweeting about it, especially if they're defenders. Top sources by false positives. This is similar to the top sources by observations. However, this will sort the owners by who has the most false positives. This is kind of the opposite of what you would see for the observations. This is who you want to stay away from. So just being aware who is submitting these false positives, as they might not have high intel quality. And then top tags. This is a collection of the top tags used to categorize indicators. This can be used to quickly find a topic or identify trends within the threat landscape. All right, and then we have the indicator breakdown. A breakdown of all the intelligence combined and what indicators make up the platform. This is not really helpful for most applications, but it does give you a nice overview, which is kind of cool. It's just interesting to see more than anything else. For the most part, the other section of the dashboard could be ignored, as they are just overviews of what is on the platform rather than specific threat intelligence. Let's talk about custom dashboards real quick. You can use all these various parts of the default dashboard to create your own personalized dashboard that fits your liking. For example, this is part of the operations dashboard that the author of this room, Krillic, likes to use. This is often done to fit your organization, so you will change it to fit threats that you are seeing on a regular basis, and it makes it more actionable for you rather than taking away precious screen real estate. When you're within a SOC or within an intelligence center, what you can have on your screen that you can be looking at is something that it's really important, especially when you consider that the majority of time spent in a SOC is what's called eyes on glass, which is looking at those alerts and seeing what is popping up. So note, Threat Connect's going to go a lot further. This is just the features that are in the free edition. So we're going to go ahead and move on to AlienVault to look at how we can gather a collection of IOCs. Mark that as complete, and then move on to Task 6, Introduction to AlienVault OTX. AlienVault OTX from AT&T Cybersecurity. This used to be its own company. AT&T bought it, I think, 2 years ago now. Is one of the main ISACs that can be used as an exchange for the community-maintained threat intelligence. The reason I note that is this is its own company within AT&T that it sustains this. It's really cool. The very, very cool project that they have. You will need to create an AlienVault account before you can fully use the application. You can go to otx.alienvault.com and create an account before continuing. This is worth having a free account just because if you want to play around with a SIM in your home lab, having this account will allow you to get an API key for OTX, and you can start messing around with pulses and tracking threats and even doing some very serious SIM work on your home network. The reason I mention this, there's a blog post that will be going up on TryHackMe's website about getting into information security. If I remember, I will link that in the video description below. Doing things like this, really, really cool if you are talking to a recruiter or in an interview. If you tell them that you have a SIM at home and you're doing this on your own and you actively have practice with this, that's pretty cool. And that really does set you apart. So definitely something that I recommend. This can be really hefty to run at home, the OSIM part of it, but again, very, very cool. All the same. AlienVault uses pulses, I mentioned those briefly earlier, to create trackers for various categories. Pulses can be categorized by malware type, APT, or group, and targeted industry. All pulses are community created, excluding official pulses by AlienVault. Official pulses by AlienVault you're subscribed to by default, so just take that in mind. Pulses can include a wide variety of IOCs such as file hashes, so MD5 or SHA-1. It also will include, I think, SHA-256, on AlienVault, IPv4, IPv6, domain, URL, YARA, CVE, and more. This is something that you'll often compile if you're doing incident response. As you are within an incident, you will start gathering these indicators, and if you have a SIM that you can hook into OTX or something like that, you can make a pulse, and it will immediately start looking for those on your network to see if it's still going on, that malicious activity. The main page of OTX you will use is the dashboard. You can see that up here. The default dashboard includes a visualization of the most common active malware, broken down by category, as well as the list of subscribed pulses. By default, only AlienVault subscribed pulses will be listed. That's because you're subscribed to them by default. This will be expanded upon later. There are 6 different tabs that you can navigate to on the navigation bar, and they are outlined below. So we have the dashboard. This is what we see up here. We have browse, which will let us search for different pulses. We have scanned endpoints. This is an automated service called OTX Endpoint Security that will scan endpoints for indicators. Create Pulse, that lets you make your own threat intelligence bundle on this. Submit Sample, again, allows you to contribute malware samples to have them analyzed, and IOCs can be generated from that. And then API integration, which is one of the neat things with having that SIM at home, is it'll give you an API key that you can use. Read the above and familiarize yourself with the OTX UI. One quick note on this for OSINT, not something that you would have expected within this room. API integration with this, you can get this key, and I believe you can put this in, there are a couple of OSINT programs. I'm failing to think of them right now, but having this key is one of them that you can use to search for pulses that are associated with targets that you're looking up as a red teamer or a pen tester. Let's move into Task 7, using OTX to gather threat intelligence. Let's talk about pulses real quick. Pulses can consist of a description of tags, or of a description, tags, indicator types, so that file hash and so on and so forth, threat intelligence, and a whole bunch of things like that. Country of origin. A lot of these, like I said, you're going to build this out as you are examining an environment. OTX uses pulses as their indicators. A majority of pulses are community created and maintained. You need to keep this in mind when using pulses for threat intelligence, as not all pulses are legitimate or contain they might contain inaccurate information. Sometimes they're not all created equal. People, when they are doing research, there's a little bit of guesswork on, is this malicious, and you can try to make adjustments to pulses as you go. So just something to be aware of. Always verify and analyze the indicators before using them for CTI. Breaking down a pulse. First, we need to understand how to analyze and gather information from a pulse in order to understand how to use OTX's many categories, ways of obtaining threat intelligence, and indicators. As an example, we'll be looking at the Xanth-Docker Aware Miner Pulse released from the official AlienVault account. So we'll dive into what this specifically is. This is a threat that AlienVault is tracking, and you can find a link to it right there. Pulses consist of 3 main sections: the pulse description, the indicator overview, and then the indicators themselves. We will break down these sections further and identify each component of them. Pulse description. The pulse description consists of the description itself, references, tags, malware families, and attack IDs. Note this is from the MITRE framework specifically. The 3 most important parts are the reference section, the description itself, and then the attack ID. The attack IDs rather. The references can be used to verify the pulse and get further background information on the pulse/indicators. The description can give you a brief overview of what the pulse is used for and how it was gathered, which can be useful when quickly looking for pulses to use. Again, you're traditionally looking for these to use within your own environment. The attack IDs can be used to identify what TTPs. Again, that's going to be the techniques. Oh my goodness, I'm going to forget the acronym. Let's jump up to the top real quick. The tactics, techniques, and procedures. There we go. So what the threat actor is actually doing are being used by the pulse, and familiarize yourself with them. For more information, check out the about attack. Check out Sam's room on the MITRE framework. Very, very cool room. Definitely, if you're looking for something to do after this room, dive right into that. And here we can see that example section with the overview. You can see different other sections in here. So this is how it was discovered and a general description of what it is. TLP is going to be the sensitivity level, which gets into a little bit more of what is allowed to be public and things like that, tags, and so on and so forth. Indicator overview. This is going to provide you a very brief statistical representation of the indicators within the pulse, as well as threat infrastructure. Think of it this way, as it's going to be percentages of the types of indicators, so it's going to tell you what the pulse is actually made up of. You want this to be a little bit more diverse. If it's just a couple things in here, that's not really all that useful, just because you want this to have a more complete collection of what your pulse, what the threat actually is, and then the threat infrastructure, which is where everything is coming from. So where your C2 beacons calling back out to, where did the malware actually get downloaded from? So if it was a phishing email, where did that come from? Who sent it? Things like that. Interesting thing with this real quick, you can actually discover that other companies have been attacked through this. So imagine you see that the original, let's say we got a phishing email and it came from maybe a mass marketing company or something like that, or another company that sends out a lot of emails. That probably indicates that they are compromised. So you can see some really interesting stuff in this and start almost linking together the attack chain that a threat actor took. From here, we can see that the pulse has 6 different types of indicators. So this is a pretty diverse pulse, and that actually has a pretty healthy amount of indicators in it, as well as 4 different countries that the pulse is originating from. Note, a majority of pulses do not have threat infrastructure. However, it can be useful for when analyzing a pulse for CTI. Again, I mentioned that briefly with talking about maybe another company that was compromised. You can see things like this. It can happen where you are doing incident response and you have to email another company after you're done cleaning up things, or in the middle when you're cleaning up things if you have some free bandwidth, and let them know, hey, I think you guys are compromised. That happens. And it's just, sometimes companies aren't mature enough that they can detect it. Indicators. Indicators are probably the most important section of the entire pulse. It contains all of the indicators and information about them. So this is a breakdown of all of this. And then it'll have also the IPs that are associated with this down here. And you can see that it's just the raw indicators, so the file hash, different URLs involved, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of information to break down for each pulse. We've talked about a little bit of these. The most interesting one here is, actually there's a couple things here. So we have the type, which is the actual type of the indicator itself. So this is the indicator here, when it was added. So if it's being actively updated, active, which shows if the indicator is still seen in the wild. Useful if you want to see if a threat actor is still active. Sometimes they go dormant, sometimes they come back. It happens. Related pulses. This is a really interesting one. You can see what other researchers are experiencing. Where this is really cool at, or really interesting to us, is looking at the sector being attacked. Are they kind of going after whoever indiscriminately, low-hanging fruit fashion, or are we being attacked because we're part of X sector, or so on and so forth? And then there's extra information such as dynamic analysis and other things like Yara rules. Useful if you do not have OTX integration and you want a Yara rule for all this that you want to plug into your SIM, you can get it right there. The advanced section of the indicators will contain the most information and allow you to get a better understanding of what you're dealing with. Not all pulses or indicators will contain any advanced information, but it can be very useful when available. Below is an example of a Yara detection and dynamic analysis of a binary file from a file hash. Just advanced information. This is essentially just the advanced details that you would need if you are studying the pulse yourself. Finding pulses based on malware. If you want to find pulses for a very specific malware strain, you can look for pulses based on malware. This allows you to very quickly find IOCs and rules for a specific strain of malware. You can just search for different things in here. If you want practice with this, search for historical malware. So for example, Love Letter. This is an old one. If you are not familiar with Love Letter, I think Jack has an episode on this for Darknet Diaries. This was a very old malware in the days of early Windows, that it was just a mass mail malware that it would email itself to all of your contacts. And I think it would overwrite every file on your desktop with a file that says I love you or something like that. Very interesting. Definitely recommend digging into that. I'm probably paraphrasing quite a bit of that. And you can see the breakdown of that here. The menu for malware is by far the most detailed, including features of the malware, related pulses, and then process visualization and file samples if available. This is really cool. It tells you what the malware file itself is actually doing. So here you can see it's doing network ICMP traffic. You have a recon fingerprint, and it looks like it's doing, I'm not sure what the JS eval is, but you can see what it is spawning. OTX will also visualize the processes the malware is running. Overall, the malware categories will allow you to quickly identify multiple aspects of malware, including processes, features, and pulses. Finding pulses based on adversaries. To get started with identifying pulses based on adversaries, you need to have a foundational knowledge of adversaries and their operations. To get an introduction, you can check out, this is one of the links I believe provided above, talks about different APTs and operations that they can do. You can identify pulses based on the adversary group. So note, each vendor has its own naming scheme for the APTs. Take note of this when looking for pulses by adversary. These numbers don't always line up exactly. Sometimes they do, just because there are a bunch of groups that research these. The adversary menu will give you a short description of the group, as well as pulses related to that group. And then finding pulses based on industry. Again, I mentioned that different pulses attack different types of industry. Finance is a really big one. Aerospace, so Lockheed Martin and different Department of Defense contractors here in the US can get attacked by different groups because they want their trade secrets. Mostly because, those are really, really valuable to different countries to be able to get blueprints for maybe advanced aeronautical components and things like that. A common vector for adversaries is to focus on the industry of their target. Again, I talked about this quite a bit. Adversaries will sometimes target corporations in one specific industry. That's usually because they want something or they know that industry might pay out. Things like that. An example of this is the Ryuk malware being distributed by one group targeting financial corporations. Yes, I do believe this is a reference to Death Note. You'll find a lot of that actually in malware, that it'll be references to things like that. Or other things within industry. Note, these are often not named by, obviously, the threat actors themselves. This is usually based on maybe if it's ransomware, whatever the file extension is, and things like that. When opening the industry menu, you will see a general description as well as any pulses, tags / related to the industry. We'll go ahead and mark that as complete, and then move into task 8, creating IOCs. All right, let's look at creating IOCs. First, I'm going to go and start this machine, and I'm going to start the attack box, as that is what I will use for this room. Let's see. Creating IOCs manually. A large portion of ISACs are community contributions where contributors take the latest sample or malware samples and create IOCs for them. There are a few tools that can help with the creation of IOCs, including Strings, WinMD5 Free, and Mandiant IOC Editor. There are also tools that can be used to automate this process, like Mandiant Redline. However, that's out of the scope of this room. Very cool tool, though, and definitely worth checking out. To begin, deploy the provided machine and RDP using these credentials. Fun fact, you should recognize these from another room. I'm not going to tell you which room that is because that would spoil the fun. However, if you're doing this room, you've probably done this, the room that this is based on before, as it's one of the most popular on the website. Please allow the machine at least 5 minutes to boot, so we'll let that boot, and then we will go ahead and RDP in there. So I'll pause this for just a moment. When we're back, I will be RDP'd in. All right, we are back. I'm going to show you guys the RDP process so that no one gets lost on this. I'm going to go ahead and launch, let's see, close that. I will press this to bring up a terminal, and then I'm going to launch Ramina. Ramina is the RDP client that I like to use, and it's included by default on the attack box. Go ahead and press cancel on here. You don't need the keyring or whatever. And then you'll see that we are presented with a Ramina remote desktop client. Let's go ahead and scroll up, and we will try to, I'm going to do this with the default options first and see if it works. Move this over just a little bit. Press OK. And let's see. The username is going to be John ALQFNA22. Let's press enter. See if this works. I might. There we go. So this is what I was afraid of. We will have to adjust this. So we'll have to press the plus mode, and then we're going to change the color depth to remote FX down there, and then paste the IP. Maybe not. That is going to be, for me, 10, 10, 99, 22. Make sure you type your own there and not mine. Unless you have the same as mine, then go for it. And then username of John, and then password of ALQFNA22. I'm going to type that again because I think I typoed that. ALQFNA22. And there we go. And now it'll go ahead and load. And you might recognize this as a particular Windows 7 machine, but yeah, you never thought you'd be logging into this one. It's a fun one. For those that haven't figured it out, this is blue. Krillic asked me if he could use it for the room, and I have it available for download anyways on my website for that reason, just because if you ever want to use this in a room like this, just contact me and let me know. Usually I will say yes, as long as it is not as long as it's on TryHackMe or whatever, but I digress. By the way, this is activated. Windows is just goofy on AWS sometimes with TryHackMe, that sometimes it just doesn't want to function properly for the activation tool. However, this is all activated, so ignore that if it comes up. If you open up the tools folder on the desktop here, we'll go ahead and cancel this because we don't really need the network application. We can see the tools necessary to create IOCs for both the practice binaries and the scenarios. To begin collecting IOCs from a sample, you gather the MD5 file hash by using WinMD5. Simply run WinMD5 and select the file you want to gather from. We'll go ahead and click on that, and then click Run, and there we go. It looks like we have in our Documents folder practice and then practice1 server.exe. We'll go ahead and browse to that. Give it a moment. If you really want to see the difference in performance between Windows 10 and Windows 7, between how much resources the operating system uses, this is an excellent example because Windows 10 boxes on TryHackMe run really slow, and this is Windows 7, and it runs really, really fast with very little resources. Just a very nice example. Let's go into practice 1, and then we have Cerber. All right. So the practice with the Cerber example in that location there, we've already got that. And let's see. So it looks like we have the MD5 checksum value there. And then if we wanted to verify this, so often when you're downloading something off the internet, they will give you an MD5 or a SHA-1 or other hashes you can use to verify that what you got is what you wanted. If those don't match up, something's wrong. You should delete that file and you should contact their website owner. And you can see that it gave it to us automatically. To get another baseline of information, we can look at the properties of the file and to get or to find other indicators, including the size, name, date created, and so on and so forth. So you can see the created date down here, the name, the type of the file, the description, and then the size there. To get our final indicator, and probably the most unique, we need to run strings on the sample to identify if there are any unusual or unique strings that we can use in the IOC. I would advise taking the output into a file viewer or into a file to view it later. We can go ahead and do that with, I'm going to actually minimize this, and we are going to scroll down just a little bit. Open up CMD. Actually, I'm going to show you guys a fun fact as well. We'll close this. If you go up here and type in the binary that you want, this is also a command line. Just fun fact. Most people don't know that, and it's really, really helpful, especially if you want something like this. And that actually opens up in this directory already, so we can see that we're already in the tools directory. Very helpful because now we don't have to navigate around. Now, what we want to go ahead and do is do /strings exe. We can tab complete on this too. And then we need to do the path to the file. And we'll go ahead and do that here. Users, John, documents, practice 1. And then we want server.exe. And then we need to accept the EULA. So we can do that with accept EULA. And we're going to go ahead and pipe that out to output. I'm going to name this actually practice.txt because we're doing this on our practice file. And we have 2 scenarios we'll do here in just a minute. Maybe not. Okay. I will mess around with this for a moment. We'll be right back once I figure out this error. All right. That was very easy, and I got it immediately after I stopped recording. Just strings.exe. You don't need the /. And then it'll just run. And then if we go in here, we can see that we have our text document, which has all of the strings in the file. You're looking for strings that are human readable and unique. This can include IPs, Bitcoin addresses, very common with ransomware, unique function names, etc. You may not always find unique strings right away with some samples. This is where the use of an automated tool such as Redline could come in handy as well for identifying other indicators. Redline will do a lot of this for you, and it's really, really nice for that reason. I think there's a free version of the tool, and that's what I recommend for using for if you're doing a CTF based on something like this. Very helpful. The string below is unique enough that it can be used as an indicator, and if we scroll down, we'll probably find it at some point, except this file is really long, so we're not going to. Long and short, you want long, unique strings. That is very helpful. Short strings like NZK, not really. Continue looking through the strings output of the shareware ransomware to find unique strings. Once you have all your indicators prepared, you can begin creating an IOC with Mandiant IOC. We'll go ahead and close this, and we can open up the Mandiant folder, and we can see IOCE. Create a new IOC by navigating to File and then New Indicator, and we'll for this, we're going to take a look at it just over here. And we can see that Acrylic has typed in the answers, or the name, and then the author here, and then a description. Add in your indicators to the IOC from the Item tab. For more in-depth information on creating IOCs, check out the IOCE user guide right there. So how to actually use this program. This is an example of an IOC for the Cerber sample. If this was a real investigation, you could then upload it to AlienVault OTX or another ISAC. And we'll give it just a little bit. It's still launching on blue over here. Creating pulses from IOCs. So don't actually take this and plug it into OTX just because we don't want a bunch of duplicate samples up there. But this is just a nice way that we can talk about how you could actually take this and make it actionable. So create new pulse. You can go to the create pulse tab. Again, this was just on the dashboard of it once you log in. And then you can see create new pulse. You drag your IOCs up here or you drag them over here to just add them all. And then it will automatically parse through what you've added. So for example, the hashes and so on and so forth to just add them to this pulse, the bundle. And then you can just add descriptions to it. So OTX also has a built-in functionality to take a malware sample under the Submit Sample tab and analyze it. This will give back many indicators, including the MD5, SHA-256 hashes, and PE anomalies, as well as related pulses. So you can see that this is an example. It's a little cut off on this just because of the way I have the screen set up, but you can see that this is a way that you can just have it done for you. Connecting IOCs with pulses. Now that we have all of our information on the unknown sample, we can look for other pulses on OTX similar to our example. This is important to gather CTI because adversaries can change their TTPs and in turn change CTI. This is why ISACs are so important to keep up with the ever-changing threat scene. Let's look at a pulse in the next task for the Cryox.B Trojan and Cerber ransomware and see if you can connect the unknown practice sample with the pulses. This specific pulse is a part of another malware known as the Cryox.B that is used as a Trojan to get the Cerber ransomware onto devices. So often you'll have two parts to this. I'm not going to go too far into this just for the sake of the scope of this room, but often enough you'll have the actual dropper, which is a small file that's meant to grab the actual ransomware, whatever you want to actually do, and pull it down to the system for you. Read the above, and we'll go ahead and mark that as completed, and move into Task 9, Investigation Scenarios. So let's go ahead and start with Scenario 1. Your incident response team has quarantined a suspicious bin file, so a binary file. The team thinks it is a ransomware variation. Investigate and create indicators for the file. You can find the shellcode under C, users John, documents, scenarios, and then Scenario 1. Let's see. So read the above and complete the investigations. We'll mark that as completed. Let's find the name of the file. We can go to we can actually just parse around in here. Documents, scenarios, Scenario 1. We can see it's this very long string. I'm just going to go to rename and then, rename and then copy. And I think the clipboard is set up on this machine. Yeah, there we go. So if we go over here, click this, and then go to the clipboard, you can copy that out, and then we can put it in. What is the size of the file from Scenario 1 in bytes? We'll close this, and then go to Properties. And there we go. We can see that it is the 96,535 bytes. So 96535. And then what is the size on disk? That is going to be 98,304 bytes. Let's go ahead and get the file hashes. We can do that with WinMD5 free, where we browse to it. Let's go up to the scenarios, Scenario 1. There we go. We can see that we have the MD5 right here. So we'll grab this and then go over here to the clipboard, pull that out, and then we can move on to Scenario 2. Scenario 2, you've been assigned to analyze this week's quarantine files. The file is thought to be an unknown Trojan or a new strain of the Emotet malware. Investigate and create indicators for the file. We can see that that is under scenario 2. Let's go ahead. We'll close this again. And then we can go up to scenarios, minimize this, scenario 2. What is the name of the file from scenario 2? That is going to be cryptowall.bin. Not suspicious at all. We can go to the properties and see that it is 246,272 bytes. And then on disk, it is going to be 249,856 bytes. And then we'll go ahead and grab the actual hash for it. If we go back over here, we can browse to it by going back to the scenario 2. And there we go. Go ahead and copy that, grab it to the clipboard, submit that there. And then looks like the last thing that we would need to do is create IOCs for both files using IOCE. You can see that we can go ahead and do that. For the sake of the video, I'm going to let you play around with this. I recommend actually taking all this data and putting it into AlienVault. Not necessarily in this case. I wouldn't recommend creating a pulse because it'll be a duplicate, but just playing around with it is good practice. So we'll go ahead. I'm just going to mark this as complete for now. I definitely recommend playing with it in the scope of this room. However, that is going to do it for this video. If you have any questions, as always, I have the TryHackMe Discord and the subreddit linked in the video description below. Feel free to hop in both of those if you have questions. I have additionally the DarkSec Discord linked down there if you'd like to join my community. Otherwise, that is going to do it for this video. I will see you guys next time, and until then, happy hacking!